All right, welcome back, everybody. PayPal and Patreon are down below if you want to support me. Only do so if you actually can. So, Afghanistan, famous for quite a number of things, many of them not the best. A particular thing that it's famous for, or at least a claim that is famously passed around the internet, it is an absolute quote-unquote treasure trove of mineral resources. So, is Afghanistan really a treasure trove of resources? Eh, on the slider scale, I guess you could say, of resource laden countries, it's actually more towards the middle. It's kind of average. It does have a number of things there, various mineral ore bodies. However, the numbers actually really aren't as impressive as said famous claims lead people to believe. One thing that it absolutely does have that we know the most immediate amount about, because it was the most thoroughly studied by geological surveys, is copper. There are various copper ore bodies across the country of different types, and the size of the potential resources, again, not reserves, this is the maximum upper estimate limit for resources for the total amount in place. In total, Afghanistan has most likely around 60 million tons of copper. About half of that is in well-known, well-studied sedimentary deposits near Kabul, similar to those of Zambia and the Congo. Sedimentary deposits being the less economical, but those in the Congo and Zambia still being economical, basically because of flat open terrain, little logistical obstacles, whereas Afghanistan is a recognizable symbol for chaos and also is heavily mountainous and a very arduous place to develop infrastructure in, even just on a basic level. Although that 30 million tons or so of copper near Kabul does also contain an accompanying 600,000 tons of cobalt or so. And then Afghanistan has also another 30 million tons of copper or so down in the southwest in Zabul, Ghazni, and Herat provinces. The much more common and much more economical type of copper deposits that are usually mined in big producers like the US and especially in mega producers like Chile. Now, how Afghanistan's numbers in terms of copper stack against other examples, upper limit of maximum resource in place is estimated to be around 60 million tons of copper, whereas, for example, in the US, the total known proved reserves that are actively being mined amount to around 44 million tons, with varying resource estimates up in the hundreds of millions of tons. And Chile, the world's biggest copper producer, contains proved reserves of copper of about 190 million tons, with its total copper resource in place probably upwards towards that 1 billion mark. So comparing Afghanistan to others, it's certainly not the gargantuan treasure trove that it's constantly advertised as. It also contains some deposits of iron ore. However, said deposits are even less impressive comparatively versus the copper deposits, with known iron amounting to around 2.2 billion tons of iron ore or so, and the potential total iron ore in place in the country being likely somewhere between 4 and 8 billion tons. Now, total numbers comparison versus other producers, the U.S. in terms of proved actively being mined iron ore reserves is about 3 billion tons, with the upper range of iron ore resources in place being up towards 110 billion tons. And then contrast even to Australia, the world's mega iron producer, who has a known, confirmed, proved 51 billion tons of iron ore, and whose likely total iron ore resource in place is somewhere up between 1 and 2 trillion tons. So the Afghanistan iron ore numbers are not impressive. One of the areas where the claims are at least vaguely true is in terms of rare earths. Afghanistan does have a decent rare earth deposition area in the Helmand province. Now, where the claims end up being false is the amount or the size. As usually, they'll say sensationalist stuff like it's, a bajillion times larger than even the reserves in Australia and China. That is not the case. Afghanistan's deposition of rare earths is around the same size as that encountered in Greenland, with the upper range of resource in place for Afghanistan in terms of rare earth metals being around 1.4 million tons, and Greenland being just above that at 1.5 million tons. Various zinc and lead deposits were surveyed, and they don't really amount to much. Afghanistan does look to have a lot of a special mineral that we rely a bit on, and that oddly isn't actually usually included in all the various claims about Afghanistan being loaded with resources. Afghanistan does look to have a decent amount of fluorspar. Fluorspar being a heavily fluorine-laden mineral, which is critical in the industrial process of refining aluminum, and Afghanistan does have a known big deposition of it in Uruzgan province of a highly likely amount of around 9 million tons, and potential that it might extend further up towards maybe 20 to 30 million tons. For comparison, some of the largest occurrences of fluorspar are in South Africa and Mexico. With those in South Africa, at least the known proved economical reserves are 41 million tons. I don't have numbers on hand for the total resource in place for either South Africa or Mexico. And Mexico, again, in terms of just known proved economical reserves, has close to 70 million tons of fluorspar. So if we take the higher end of likely total resource in place for Afghanistan in terms of fluorspar, it once again finds itself in the middle of the road. And in terms of gold, it finds itself on the smaller end of things, having a likely confirmable 700 tons or so, maybe, and potential for a maximum total resource in place between 2 and 3,000, which puts it in about the range of one of the smaller producers currently, Mali. One final particular thing that does put Afghanistan in a unique category, though, not necessarily because of the amount, but just because of the occurrence itself, as in terms of mineable concentrations of it, it's not the most abundant thing to find. Afghanistan does actually have some bit of niobium, which is a critical alloy component for all kinds of high strength steels, as well as for super alloys that are required for aircraft engines and power plant turbines. And the upper limit resource in place estimate for Afghanistan is around 3.5 million tons of niobium, which is a bit over twice as much as Canada's approved economical reserves of niobium. Canada supplying roughly 10% of the world's niobium, with a huge chunk of the other 90% being supplied by Brazil. Brazil's known proved reserves of niobium being about 10 times that of Canada, coming in at 16 million tons. So the presence of mineable concentrations of niobium does put Afghanistan in a unique category. But overall, looking across the various resource occurrences, it's not actually the wonderland treasure trove of minerals and resources that it is constantly sensationally sold as. If I had to guess, I'd just say that's a lot of people trying to justify backwards through time to themselves why the US got involved for so long in Afghanistan, to avoid the mental acceptance of it just having been a dumb decision. All right, that's it for this one then. So thank you everybody for sticking around and listening. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't already. PayPal and Patreon links are down there if you want to support me. Only do so if you actually can. Also, watch or listen to any of my other episodes. I have way too many of them on here at this point about all kinds of topics. And of course, go subscribe to my Cat's channel, help us get her up to 1,000 subs, and hopefully eventually up to however many viewing hours she needs to get monetized. But no matter what happens to me, may God bless and protect all of you, and I will see you all around next time.